welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate. Still watching that subscriber. Still got our president's power rankings under lock and key until we hit the to be determined subscriber goal. Lots to get to here on a Monday. We are going to be going through with our annual review of some of the longest conference title droughts at the highest levels of college football, and specifically with 2024, what are the chances that we see one of those droughts snapped? I will say that last year we talked about SMU, which had not won a conference championship since the mid-'80s. What did Rhett Lashley and the Mustangs do? Boom, snapped it. Won the American Athletic Conference this past year. So that was one off the board. That as we look ahead, we'll get into those and more. But we begin. We're not gonna do every single episode with the segment on this, but we do have a little bit more because, Danny, it's our favorite word. We're socializing, baby.
Yeah.
Socializing all kinds of things. You know, I was socializing on Person Street Saturday night. We're socializing revenue distributions. We're socializing different formats. And it looks like we've got some kickback on the idea that the Big Ten and the SEC champ would get an automatic bid or automatic bye out of the first round in a 14-team model. You know, Sonny Dykes, TCU head coach, telling ESPN, automatic first-round buys for the Big Ten, the SEC's like the NFL, saying the Cowboys get a first-round bye just because they got more fans. How preposterous is that? Extra use of preposterous, Sonny. I know you're a big fan of the podcast. So, Danny, is this a win for the Big 12, the ACC? Is this a win for the rest of college football, or do you think that there's more that's coming out of this pushback on the two automatic buys?
Oh, I think they would love it to be perceived as a win. Like, look at us. We pushed back. We finally got something to go our way. But is that 58% number budging at all? That's the number that matters. So, no, I don't think it's a win in the grand scheme of things. I mean, I think it's protection. And I wonder how serious the SEC and Big Ten were actually about this as like a real thing. Probably like, why not ask for it? But I'd say thank goodness it didn't happen. I'll put it at that. But I don't think it's some big, massive win for the ACC and Big 12. I think it preserves some integrity to the playoff structure.
Hey, Chip, if somebody breaks into your house and takes everything you own, but they leave your TV, are you like, well, that's a win? They left the TV.
But yes. They did try to take it, maybe. They were like on the way out.
Yeah.
You know?
They dropped it, and it still works. Yeah. No, I like what you said within, like, integrity is not a word we often use around college football. But there is something to be said for, look, if you are an undefeated, like team that is just blowing everybody out of the water, you're not going to be kept from getting one of these first two buys. So I would say that it is a win for the format in general.
It's sort of like pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, right? Like, hey, like look at this. Look at this distraction. What they really want, it seems to be, is to format this thing exactly how they want it, they being the Big Ten and the SEC. And they're either going to get that in the current format with everybody agreeing to what they want, or they're maybe going to have to dip. Now, there's a lot of problems that come with dipping, like political stuff, organizations. Like, it's not as easy as it sounds to just go create your own league. But we said it on Wednesday. This always felt like a kind of a thing they would throw out there just to sort of be able to cave on it. And, it's just negotiating tactics. The real key here is, if the SEC and the Big Ten are getting 58% of the revenue, plus what they're going to get on a per share basis. Like, that's the thing. If you read Dellinger's report, it's 58% as a base. And then you get a certain percentage of the playoff pot for every team you put in there. And if we're going to assume that you can put 7 teams in there on average, which I think is, what do you think? Like 6.75, 7 is like a fair average to think. Maybe 6.5.
Are you saying they each, like of the 3 at-large bids, they're each going to have at least one? So you're saying 7 would be from the Big Ten and the SEC on average?
I tend to think like 6.5 may be a good number for an over-under. Like, they're not always going to have 7, but most likely that would seem pretty fair. So you're going 58% for those 2 leagues, plus what you get out of the shares. You're really getting like a stratification of this thing that is going to be untenable if you are one of like the 4 programs out there who think of yourself as competing for national titles who are not in those 2 leagues. But it is interesting to me too that they seem to get the revenue thing now is the most important thing to agree to before they sign off on this ESPN deal officially, and then they'll figure out the format later, which is probably what they wanted to do all along. Because I don't know how in the hell you can figure out a format when, like, I don't anticipate Florida State being in the ACC by the time this thing starts, right? Like, I don't think Clemson's going to be there. So how are you going to agree to a format when you don't know who's going to be in these leagues, but you do know like the baseline money you want to make? I also think the not trusting the committee thing is largely a red herring. Okay. Like, it's not that hard to come up with the strength of schedule formula and tell the committee who you run, hey, you need to follow this pretty strictly, right? Like we had it with the BCS, they tweaked it, and then like the results. Also, like the entire reason the committee is giving preferential treatment to the SEC and Big Ten. Like, you're worried what are they going to not be biased in towards you?
But if you're going to tell the committee, like, we're going to create an SOS metric or like college basketball's net ranking, right? Whatever kind of format you want to do, and this is what we're going to follow to determine at-larges, then you don't need the committee at all, because it would just be, well, they're ranked higher than this. So it's, I don't know. You're dead on. The fact that they're negotiating how much money they get before they have a format tells you everything you need to know about what this is all really about. They just want to make sure that whatever the format is at the end of the day, which they will dominate because they are the two most dominant leagues, they will also dominate the financial windfalls that will come from this new playoff. Maybe they won't separate themselves officially, but they are doing everything in their power with everything that they do to make sure that they separate themselves within the current structure.
It's so preferable to stay. If you can get all the terms you want to stay, rather than having to run it's easy to be on Twitter or the internet or just with your buddies a couple beers and say like, oh, we want to run our own thing. It's a big pain in the ass, man. Being able to stay is so preferable if you can get every single term that you want, which it seems like they're getting almost all of it.
No chance they would leave?
I can't say no chance, because there's some tough stuff here. Like, I think Yormark would sign up for 2 bids for his league like that. I think the ACC is the conference that is in the real tough position here, because Yormark doesn't have any teams that legitimately, like, in their heart of hearts, if you hit them with the truth serum, that they really believe they're playing for the biggest title in the sport. All right, I guarantee. Like, I don't think Utah thinks they do, or Kansas State, or anybody like that really thinks they're playing, really chasing a natty. The ACC's got 3 who try to act that way, and if you're the ACC commissioner, Jim Phillip, man, that's a tough pill to swallow, because you're going to have to like make some people really mad.
On a per conference payout, according to you mentioned Ross's report over at Yahoo Sports, the gap from the Big Ten and the SEC to the ACC and the Big 12, about $300 million annually, and then another $300 million drop off before the pot that will be slotted to the rest of the group of 5. That's significant, but I guess that's what it's why the Big 12 would sign up for it. You're going to be like, okay, we're still going to be able to be a part of this. We're still going to be able to have 2 teams minimum in every single year, but we are just going to be falling further behind in terms of payouts, and then probably in terms of results as well. Anything else stand out from this?
Well, just to reiterate, like, the larger concern again is if you're going to be playing or paying players as employees or some type of payment as a percentage of revenue distribution, then this matters a whole lot to you if you're a coach in one of those leagues that's not making 58%, because you're just not going to compete on players.
We'll see. A lot to get to. Again, the plan, as Bud was mentioning, is for them to get the TV deal ironed out in the next weeks, and then this format, it does look like the fast pass is already starting to get taken off the table, though maybe in exchange for some of these revenue distributions. Coming up on the other side, wait, it's been how long since Ole Miss won a conference championship? Could Lane Kiffin and the Rebels snap that this year? We'll get into the Rebels, the Wolfpack, and so much more next.
Blackout mystery remains.
Welcome to March Madness.
You just never know in the tournament who is going to shine.
Stream March Madness live on any device, anywhere, and be ready for anything.
Well, we here at the Cover 3 podcast would like to extend a warm welcome to the newest podcast in our CBS Sports family. It's that month that we know you're craving hoops, and maybe not just on the college level. Beyond the Arc is a brand new show featuring daily NBA discussions with hosts John Gonzalez, Bill Ryder, and Ashley Nicole Moss, as well as regular appearances from NBA champion Avery Johnson. Download and follow Beyond the Arc wherever you find this podcast. All right, so conference title droughts 2024 edition. First, let's take a look at some ones of note that we have. These are programs that have not won a conference championship since 1970. Got Iowa State all the way back in 1912. Barton still working on getting Vanderbilt there in 1923. Mississippi State, no conference titles since 1941. Ole Miss, as we mentioned before the break, in 63. Indiana and Minnesota actually shared the Big Ten championship in 1967, and the curse was that neither of them would ever win it again. No conference titles for Indiana or Minnesota since 1967. Kansas, this might be one that we talk about, since 1968. And the UAB Blazers, Trent Dilfer trying to get the Blazers their first ever conference championship. No conference titles for UAB. So let's start with some of those ones that are at the more likely end. I mentioned NC State. They are 1979. North Carolina at 1980. I would say NC State is more likely than that. So let's begin with the Ole Miss Running Rebels. Danny, what do you think the chances are that Lane Kiffin can get Ole Miss its first conference championship since 1963 here this season?
I like them a lot. There's just one small problem.
Everybody else?
Georgia. Like, I think they could win the West. Like, if it was just a division title, I think it'd be great. Like, I think they could get to the SEC championship game. But barring, an injury to Carson Beck, barring something happen, I mean, I just need to see them take that next step. I think they're in this conversation, though, which is great for Ole Miss. Like, I think they have elevated the program. It's one of the reasons they're going all in. I mean, they just had their first 11-win season in school history. So they are doing things that they haven't done before. So I like them in this conversation, but I would not have them at the top of the list.
First of all, I just want to say, going back to your comment about Barton, Chip, it is well known that if it wasn't for the mafia, Vanderbilt would have won conference titles. But we've got reports about mobsters paying Vanderbilt backups $300,000 a year to throw games because Vandy needs help. I will just say I'm very happy that the mafia is back. It's been a while. Even Marty Scorsese abandoned us there. He's been making movies about other stuff. So it's nice to get the mob back in the news and to know that we have the kind of money to throw Vandy games. But as for Ole Miss, I'm with you, Danny. Like, I think if you're looking at their chances at any time in recent history, this is probably their best bet, or at least the best chance they've had in a very long time. When you look at how that offense was last year, what they've got coming back on offense, and the moves they've made in the portal, particularly on the defensive line with Walter Nolan, to improve the defense, which has been a problem for them in recent seasons. I mean, it hasn't been, I wouldn't call it awful, but I wouldn't call it good. And I think there's a legitimate shot that defense this year could be good. So when you pair it with that offense, this is a team, then you throw in what Alabama's dealing with Saban retiring and a complete overhaul of that program. This is their best shot to get to Atlanta that I think they've had. But like Danny said, when you get to Atlanta and you have to face Georgia, can you get past Georgia? Now, I really didn't think Alabama had a great chance to get past Georgia last year, and it did. So I can't say that it's impossible, but I'd still say the odds aren't great, but they're the best odds they've been in a long time.
Ole Miss is really interesting to me. Of the teams in the SEC that I would pick definitively over Ole Miss as of right now, March 11th, Georgia, as Danny said, and then University of Texas. I do think Texas is probably a clear tier above Ole Miss, but maybe not like way above, but I think I would take them over. But there are some areas that are not entirely transfer related on this team that could take a jump. Like Ole Miss last year, I dogged them a lot because I thought they were real soft and they got pushed around by the better team, just kind of physically whipped up front. So like that's an area they got to
scammy. That was your word, scammy.
They felt like a scam. Yeah, exactly. They would beat up on the bad teams, but yeah. Now, their receivers were really banged up last year.
Mhm.
If those guys play, or like they just stay healthier and can win some one-on-ones, because Lane Kiffin is so good at tricking defense and scheming up one-on-nones to where they're just wide the hell open. If they can win some of the times when, like some of the jump ball stuff, some of the contested catch stuff, if they can create their own openness, like if they can just get open without being schemed open, that can help a ton. And I thought Dart was also kind of dinged last year at times and playing through it. And if I don't like think of him as like a high level, like NFL type quarterback, but I don't 100% know that he's not. Like there is some chance that maybe he has something in him to take a leap too. And if that happens, Ole Miss is pretty scary.
Do you think that, because we're not picking them to win the West?
Right. I forgot about that as we were talking about this. That's what I was going to follow up with a question. Do you think they have a better chance to win a national championship or an SEC championship this year? They do play Georgia in the regular season. They potentially could have to beat them twice.
I think SEC.
I think it's SEC too.
Really?
Yeah. I think that with their favorable schedule, they could wind up in one of the two spots. And in one game in Atlanta, I have more faith in Ole Miss to win one game on a Saturday in December in Atlanta than to win 3 to go win a national championship, also against the best teams in the country.
Yeah, it seems like 3 or 4x harder to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would just, I mean, you know.
What if they beat Georgia 3 times? What if they beat Georgia in the regular season, the SEC championship, and in the college football playoff?
It'd be good. I actually think that they would win the national championship then, because you know what would happen is then they would lose their next game.
Yeah, for sure.
So they would beat Georgia,
Arizona.
Beat Georgia in the regular season, beat Georgia in the SEC championship, beat them again in like the semifinals, and then get smoked in the title game because he ain't got nothing left after that. I'm excited. I think breaking up East and West helps Ole Miss, Tennessee, like a lot of these programs that have not always, they lose a couple tiebreakers and then all of a sudden they're cooked. Now they've got other ways to be able to make it up into the conference championship picture. I like Ole Miss there. It has not been all the way since the 1960s since Tennessee won their last football championship. Speaking of, Tom, you've been thinking about Nico. You've been writing about Nico. What do you think the chances are Tennessee is able to snap its conference championship drought this year?
Not great. Like I like Nico. We've only seen him play once against Iowa in a bowl game, but you saw the flashes. You saw what the hype is about with him. You saw what he can do. But it's still going to be his first season as a starter. And I think that offense will be suited to him. That offense will go to his strengths and allow him to do what he does well. And they will score points because that's what it's designed to do. I just don't know if the Vols as a team, even with Nico this season, are in a spot where I can look at them and say, oh yeah, that team can win the SEC. They might get a playoff berth. They might sneak in as an at-large if things go well enough. But as far as winning the league, I think that's a bridge too far.
You think you have to consider the possibility because of the upside of Nico. I'm relatively sure he's going to be good. And I think he'll be better than Joe was for them.
Yes.
But I'm not 100% sure he's going to be light the world on fire superstar. But if he is, athletically, this kid's different too. He was a really high level volleyball player with could have played international volleyball at that level. Danny will tell you all that's pretty special there. The arm is really, really nice. If they have a Heisman level quarterback, I think they have enough pass rush on defense to play the style that Tennessee wants to play, right? You got a lot of guys who can pass rush on that defense, who can just rip off the edge. If you're playing a game in a dome in Atlanta against Georgia, right, or against Texas, not in the rain like the last time we saw them really try to be competitive against UGA, maybe you got a guy just playing out of his mind with Nico. So I think Tennessee, they could do it. I don't think are they materially worse than Ole Miss as far as their chance to win it? And if so, is that because of the schedule or is that because of the team or both?
My talent evaluation says that Ole Miss is better, but my talent evaluation also recognizes that I might need to see more development from players on that Tennessee roster. When you have all those transfer portal additions of guys who are good elsewhere, it's going to be easier for me to be like, oh yeah, when in reality, plug and play might not work. They might not be able to repeat the same level of success that they had elsewhere. And Tennessee might have, more players that I still need to hear about from spring practice to be able to feel confident in. I look at those two depth charts. I look at Ole Miss's depth chart. I feel like I know what I'm going to get. And I think it's just like a shade better.
But if this is tiered, we're putting them on the same tier, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we're in a spot now where last year felt kind of like a down year for Tennessee, coming off what they did the year before. That's a great spot to be in if you're 8-4 in the regular season.
Yeah.
Like that. So to me, it tells me because I do think it was incredibly erratic and inconsistent and different with Milton. I think some of this has to be my biggest question mark for Nico is health and durability because he is skinny. He's really skinny.
So that I have a feeling like at this time next year we could be talking about Tennessee the same way we are Ole Miss. Like I feel like maybe 2025 is the year where if they're good again this year, they win 8 to 10 games, whatever, the same kind of performance they've had the last few years. But Nico really does have a season where it's like, oh wow, this kid, he's going to enter 2025 as maybe a Heisman candidate, like a favorite. Then they load up in the portal, the same kind of way Ole Miss did, where they kind of make the run for that season. So I could see Tennessee being next year's Ole Miss, if that makes sense.
Sure. Danny, to your point, 6-1 at home. Only home loss was to Georgia. Like of the losses, one of them's Alabama. One of them's the best Missouri team that we've seen in a decade.
Right.
Outside of the Florida game, which was right at the beginning of the season, there's not a lot from Tennessee last year that you got to be overly disappointed in. Again, 1998 was the last time that Tennessee has won a conference championship. Not one of the longest ones that we've discussed on here, but I felt like they hit that axis of it's been a while and also they're pretty good and right there in the conversation. So felt like
is this conversation, if we were putting bets on this, would the bet be who breaks the drought this year or who breaks it first?
Between Ole Miss and Tennessee. This is a really good debate. Or just
right, because that's what I was thinking. If it was this year, I think I'd lean Ole Miss. But if it was first, I might say Tennessee.
Yeah, because I feel like this year for Ole Miss is like kind of a do or die kind of season. Like there could be a step back in 2025. Not like a significant one, but just not.
We're not talking about them.
Title. Yeah.
We're not talking about Mississippi State right now. I mentioned Mississippi State because it's been forever, but we do not think that team is competing for an SEC championship this year.
12-0 season incoming.
Here we go.
Bulldogs. Insufferable Brandon Walker.
Tennessee feels more sustainable.
Yeah.
To me. I don't know that I think Ole Miss this year has a better chance, mostly because of path. But if you sort of want to read into moves and what happened, like because Ole Miss did take 2 players from Tennessee that I don't think Tennessee really wanted to keep all that much. So what does that say about Ole Miss? And then they both of them, I believe, bounced already. So
Barrett,
what does that say about
one of them, the pass rusher?
Yeah. Like what does that say about Ole Miss's internal evaluation of its roster and then who they took off Tennessee's roster? Like if Tennessee wanted to keep those guys, I think they could have done so. So like we're sort of assuming that Ole Miss is a better roster, and they might be. But again, like you're taking a little skeptical. We'll see.
That's something to keep an eye on for sure. I was thinking on the fly, is Nico the best quarterback that Tennessee has had throughout this drought?
He could be. Hendon was pretty good for a couple of years there.
Oh yeah.
So
Hendon was spectacular for 2 years, but I do think you could get close to that with Nico.
Yeah, you could surpass it too, because I do think like athletically he's the most gifted quarterback they've had in a long time.
Yeah,
Dobbs was not terrible.
Dobbs was very good, and Dobbs was consistent. He's got one of those, like he was there holding it down, saving them after the Tyler Bray experience and the Justin Worley experience. And
Tyler Bray had the best tattoo, that's for sure.
Yeah, the best throat slash too.
Yeah,
most upside for sure, though. I think is fair to say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. All right, what about the NC State Wolfpack? 1979 was the last time that NC State has won an ACC championship. South Carolina actually was 1969, but it was an ACC championship. They have 0 SEC championships since making the move in the early 70s. But we're looking at the Wolfpack here because, as we've mentioned, like an Ole Miss, if you follow this team's transfer portal activity, they are gearing up to try to make a run for it. It's not just Grayson McCall pulling in the former Coastal Carolina quarterback, but sort of some key additions on both sides of the ball that have them, that the Wolfpack look at the schedule, they look at their roster, they think they can go and make a run at this. Danny, what do you where do you think with Dave Doran's squad? You think they got a chance to be able to snap the drought?
I do. I think if there was a year to do it, again, like it's longer term, I don't know, but I do think this year probably with the question marks at Florida State, who are having to replace all the talent they lost. Clemson, I'm not 100% sold on just yet, like that they're just fixed, that they're going to be back. Miami has question marks. Louisville, I think, might take a step back. So I think they're in the conversation just as much as these other teams. And I think the path there in the ACC is probably easier than anybody we've talked about so far. So, I do think I can totally understand why they're viewing this as an opportunity.
It all hinges on McCall, though.
Yeah.
Like last year, their quarterback play was really pretty poor. And I know they had receiver problems too, and they're addressing that with keeping Concepcion and bringing some guys in via the portal. But they need Grayson McCall to be what he was in 2021. And he really hasn't finished the season healthy in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So can he get back to that level? How much of that was Grayson and how much of that was what I think most of us, I think, at least think that, yeah, exactly. Like that Chadwell offense really kind of made that thing go. But there is a lot that is bankable about this NC State program. I think they probably have the best strength program in the ACC. If you look at the ratings of their guys out of high school and how much bigger and stronger they get on a year in, year out basis, it's a good investment every single year. The defense is almost always really good, even with losing Peyton Wilson. So I could see it. I don't think are they more likely to do it than a Tennessee or Ole Miss?
Yes.
I think so too, because it's all about knocking off Georgia or there's not that team that they have to go through.
Yeah, I don't think Florida State's a monster. I don't think that Miami's interesting. We'll see what the Cam Ward experience produces, and I want to hit on the Hurricanes in just a second. But, like you mentioned, Danny, Clemson should not scare NC State. I mean, NC State's got a couple of wins against Clemson under Dave Doran, at least one. But I think that NC State looks across the rest of the conference, and given the way that the Wolfpack have performed, they've got to believe that they've got a chance against almost anybody. If they can get to Charlotte, they're not going to feel like, underdogs, worlds against us type thing.
I mean, we've seen lots of ACC teams, even in the years where Clemson was dominant and, Florida State's. You see that the team that they usually face in Charlotte is sometimes an outlier, like whether it's a Pitt or it's a Georgia Tech, whatever. So I can't rule out NC State's ability to get there because with that program, they have a really high floor. You know what you're going to get. It's not going to be a bad football team. I just don't know if I could put them in that kind of category where I think they're going to win the league. I mean, I am not high on Grayson McCall. I do think that was mostly the offense, and I think that Grayson going into a tougher league will not have the same kind of success in a completely different offense. So I think that's going to be a problem for them, but I can't rule it out. But I would honestly think Ole Miss has a better chance to win the SEC than NC State does the ACC.
Tom, reminder, Louisville was this close to winning the ACC last year.
Yeah, and they lost to a team with its third string QB. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yes,
I still think Florida State and Clemson, even with the questions surrounding them, just from a talent perspective, and I can't believe of the four of us, I'm the one on this show defending Florida State for once. I think that they are just at a different level. Like, I think with DJU is not a spectacular quarterback. We know exactly what he is, but you also know what you're going to get. And he's a solid, good enough guy to help you win games. Cam Ward is not a terrific player, but I think he's solid, good enough that Miami will have a higher floor. And then if you look at Clemson, they still have monsters on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't know if NC State has enough depth to where I can look at them and say, yeah, they can win the league unless they get a lot of breaks.
I think that's fair. To me, there's no Georgia level team or Texas level team in the ACC this year.
Correct.
Right? Like Florida State is taking a serious step back in terms of star talent. I do think the sneaky thing about Florida State is that their depth and the like minimum talent of starter on that team is like much better than it was 2 years ago.
Mhm.
So they're probably not going to have an enormous fall off. They won't go 13-0 again, most likely, but you will have to kind of step up to beat them. I don't think they're going to come all the way back. Clemson probably has that highest potential in the league because they had so many young studs hit last year. Like that recent recruiting class they had is awesome. If they did any kind of portal stuff, Clemson would be odds on to win this league. Like it would be they got a couple holes they need to fix and they just don't seem to address them. But there are more teams in front of NC State than there are of like an Ole Miss or a Tennessee. Right? Like Ole Miss, Tennessee, it's basically just Georgia, Texas, and then we can debate a couple. Maybe you want to put Bama in there, LSU, whatever. In the ACC, I mean, you have 3 plus arguably Louisville, so that's like 4, potentially in front of NC State as we think of it now. So I guess like the final boss is much easier to face in the ACC, but the path to get to the final boss for that level of team is probably a little bit tougher.
Man, for a guy who says he doesn't play video games, you just laid it out really well there.
Final boss is a good.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. Okay, so what about those Hurricanes? Their drought has only been since 2003, but again, like a Tennessee, kind of feels like one of those crosses of has a pretty good chance, but also, it's been a minute. They have 0 ACC championships. They made the move to the conference in 2004, winning a share of the Big East in 2003. So, Tom, what do you think the chances are? You just said Cam Ward serviceable. Do you think that he's good enough to be able to get the Canes to a title?
Not this year, no. I mean, the ACC is wide open. Like, again, there's a chance. I'm not going to sit here and think based on what I have seen from Miami the last few years under Mario Cristobal and just in general, even before Mario, like this is a team that, how long has it been in the ACC now? And it hasn't won the ACC. And
20 years.
Yeah, it's a proof of concept thing with me. I need to see Miami week in and week out not shoot itself in the foot multiple times. If they can do that, they have the talent, they have the ability to do it. They have a league in which there is it's an easier path, like we've just been talking about with NC State. So yeah, it's possible. I'm not betting on it. No.
I look at them and I like Cam Ward a lot for college purposes. The receiver they lost to Georgia in the portal had like one of the highest contested catch rates in the country. So that's going to be something that they have to kind of replace. Tight end has been largely a hole, but we'll see if like a young guy like Arroyo can, stay healthy and step up there. O-line I think has a chance to not step back, and it was pretty good last year and stayed incredibly healthy. So you do lose Cohen and Matt Lee there, center and guard, or guard and center respectively. I'm a little bit worried about running back. Like that Trevante Citizen injury was pretty serious. I don't know if he's ever going to bounce back to what he was. And Mark Fletcher, after the bowl game injury, is still not back. So I'll be interested to see if Miami's going to pursue a back in the transfer portal because it's Cristobal. He's going to want to run the ball a ton of the time. I don't know if he's really going to like let Cam Ward cook or if that's the best path. And then defensively, I mean, to me, you lose both your safeties in James Williams and Cam Kitchens. They bring in some transfers I think they're fairly excited about. Corner is, I don't know, it's okay.
Iffy.
But they need Nigel Kelly and Akeem Mesidor to like actually be healthy and be impact dudes. And if they are, I think you can make a case for Miami being the favorite in the league. But if they're not, I think like they're a very star power dependent team to me. And they need their studs to be studs.
They're strong on the lines of scrimmage, which is what you expect from a Cristobal team. And that's going to give them a solid foundation and floor no matter what.
I think Cam Ward's a difference maker. I think they're very much in the hunt for the ACC championship this year. Last year, if they didn't have the dreaded no knee play, that set them back. They lost the next week to North Carolina. That game might play out differently. And then if everything else plays out the same, they're 9-3. Like think about, we'd be talking about them a little bit differently if they were 9-3 as opposed to 7-6. And it's interesting because we were like totally understand what you guys are saying about Mario Cristobal. Does he keep, does he let Cam Ward, does he let him cook, or does he keep him under wraps? His style of play he might cook no matter what. Like if things don't go the way they're going according to script, he's going to find a way to make a play. So that's where I do think his upside is tremendous. And I thought that was a big reason why, I was hoping that Florida State would have got Cam Ward. I think he's a difference maker. So I think that for that reason, they're very much in the hunt. I think DJ will have a better supporting cast, I think he's in a better foundational system that's at a better place. I think Cam Ward could be a difference maker for them.
Like, I know this gets said a lot about a lot of programs, and this is going to tick off like NC State fans. But it would be so much better for the ACC if Florida State, Clemson, and Miami are all good than it would be if NC State's making a run to Charlotte for the ACC title game. You know what I mean? Just like as far as ratings and just kind of, especially with the current atmosphere, just kind of making an impact. If all three of those teams can be good and in contention for a conference title come the end of the year in the playoffs, it would be much better for the league.
It's the old baseball analogy, right? NC State is an awesome 7 or 8 hitter in your lineup. Like everybody in the world would love to have that. If they're your 3-hole hitter, that's kind of a problem. That's what, like, to take it back to the old ACC blogosphere days, that was all arguments. Like, damn, we got like Boston College, Wake, and the Hokies as your sort of like 1, 2, 3 hitters in this league. That's really not going to work.
Cam Ward targeted his slot receiver like 85 times, or completed passes to his slot receiver like 85 times. And now that slot receiver is Xavier Restrepo. Somebody's one of the better wide receivers in the ACC. I think that will be fruitful. I think the Jacoby George relationship will be fruitful. It is fascinating that the only thing that's stopping me from being more optimistic is the head coach. That is just okay. Because do you remember they went to overtime with Virginia?
Yes.
And a bad year. Like,
yes.
What?
Right after they had beaten Clemson.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. That's where they're
infuriating.
Yeah.
They played well in Tallahassee.
Yeah. Yeah. They had Florida State in a tough spot.
It's a world. Yeah. I just get the Mario Mario roller coaster. I don't know. I'm this mouthful. I'll figure something out, but it's maddening for sure.
There's also like the create your own energy thing. Like we talk about this, but we talk about it because it's real. There are 3 or 4 games a year that are not total cupcake games, that are losable if you play well, that their fans do not attend. And it is weird because the other team is still going to be up for you every single game. We talked about this with Colorado, right? Because of the hype, because tradition. Like if they see that you on the helmet, they're still going to play hard and be up. And your fans don't show up. It's a weird mental state to be in that very like just sterile environment of a building that they play in. So that's a tough thing. Like that is on Cristobal, but you do have to find a way to get your guys up for every game, or just be so damn talented that they can win anyway, even if they don't get up. But we've seen that in recent years. Like they just come out flat sometimes.
Not Cristobal. When Mark Richt had them running hot in 17 and they got to 10-0, they had a couple games that were just like awesome looking atmospheres.
The Notre Dame game
looked awesome, but I don't think that that's a realistic expectation for all 7 of your home games. It's just going to have to be like those games, those opponents. Then it can get loud, but it's really, really tough when you are so far from that's not even like, forget on campus, off campus stadium. You guys know, ain't nothing around there.
No.
Yeah.
It's 35, 40 minutes from campus. It's not even close to like downtown Fort Lauderdale or down. Like it's just not convenient.
Not at all.
It's a horrible spot.
Anyway, so yeah, Miami has not won at all in the ACC. Their last conference championship came in 2003. Miami and NC State among the teams that we should keep an eye on, potentially snapping their drought in that conference. Coming up on the other side, some of the longest droughts exist in the Big 12, including conference droughts for some new Big 12 members. Texas and Oklahoma are gone. Who's going to get up there and win it? We'll get into that and more next.
CBS celebrates Women's History Month.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, breaking down some of the longest conference title droughts in major conference college football. And in the Big 12, we say no Texas, no Oklahoma. A lot of room to be able to get up there and start winning trophies. Well, not that Texas did. It was really more of an Oklahoma thing. But now, hello, Kansas. Hello, Iowa State. And yes, new member Arizona, which has not won a conference championship this century. I believe that Arizona's came in the 90s. What do we think about Kansas's chances, Tom, to be able to win the Big 12 and snap a conference title drought that goes back to 1968?
I think they're pretty decent, all things considered, because I think you look at the Big 12, we've talked about it many times about since the realignment, like who can't win this league next year? Like there might be 2 teams in the league right now who you look at and say they've got no shot in hell. And even they might have a shot in hell. So you look at Kansas, you look at how they've been the last few seasons. Jalen Daniels is coming back. He needs to stay healthy. That's a huge question mark. You lose your offensive coordinator to Penn State, but you've still got Lance Leipold. Defensively, you were okay at the start of last year. I felt like things really deteriorated as the season went on. You're going to have to make some changes there. But just in the random number generator of a conference that the Big 12 is, and Kansas's ability to put points on the board and do so in a hurry, yeah, they've got a legit shot to win the league this year. Like I said, everybody in the Big 12 has a legit shot to win the league this year.
I don't know about everybody, but I do think Kansas is in that sort of like upper third of teams that really.
Is UCF the farthest down you'll go?
Well, when saying furthest down, we have to figure out like who do you have ranked? Like is TCU further down than UCF in your mind?
Yes.
Not in my mind, but I do think they are.
Okay. Is West Virginia?
I think West Virginia is live. I don't think they've got a good shot. I look at that league, and based on what I saw last year, the only team I really don't think has a legitimate shot, and legitimate's the wrong word. The only team I don't think has a snowball's chance in hell is Baylor. I think everybody else kind of has a shot.
BYU?
Cincinnati?
BYU, Arizona State,
Arizona State?
Houston, to me.
You look at some of the advanced metrics on Cincinnati, they weren't as bad as they played. I don't think they're going to, but I can't completely rule the Bearcats out.
What advanced stats?
No. Hey. Here's the thing. Like last year, I bet Oklahoma State at 60 or 66-1, whatever it was. Almost all of these teams have better odds that we just listed off that we think can't win the league have better odds than that to do so. You know, TCU at the 40-1 shot 2 years ago was still like those are much longer odds than most of these teams have. I mean, even looking on, well, FanDuel was down this morning, so I pulled up from another reputable website, but like Baylor's 41, Colorado's 50-1. Do we think they can win the league? I don't, but it's not entirely impossible that they could in theory. Yeah, like you're talking about a lot of coin flips. Neil Brown won 9 games last year, almost entirely on the back of like a crazy easy schedule, good culture, and winning a bunch of coin flips. Okay. I think West Virginia recognized that. They're like, hey, little pay cut here for that 9-win season. That was so you can coin flip your way to a league championship basically here. It's kind of what makes it so much.
They're still playing 9 games this year, right? Conference schedule.
Yes.
You can go 6-3 and still win this league in conference. That leaves a lot of teams available.
Out of all these teams, Kansas might be my favorite of all these that we've gone over so far.
Mm-hmm.
Like as far as the opportunity to break the streak, to do it. With the momentum they bring in, I think Jalen Daniels, it is his back, which makes me nervous. As somebody with back issues, I know Tom does, and it's like, oh boy, how serious is it? Because remember last year, no one knew. And it was like, why isn't he playing today? It's like, oh, he's got a back issue. Then he was brought. I do think hopefully shutting him down, getting him like the rest that he needed. Maybe he was able to go, but they shut him down completely, gets him back. They also have their running back coming back. Like they've also got a physicality and they're well coached and they're just a really solid team. And I think there's question marks around, speaking of injuries, what's Cam Rising going to be for Utah? Arizona's got a new coach. So like that's a whole culture thing, even though I like Fafita, but like, how's that going to work out? I like the stability of Kansas. I will say this though, when Leipold got his extension and his raise, the big announcement was, they've committed $450 to new football facility and operations center. Wish they had taken some of that money and put it towards players. I know they can't, but they could have redirected it somehow, because that's where I think they could. That's where your money's better spent. So
shout out to the I think it was a Maryland administrator who said they were at a ribbon cutting ceremony. Have y'all heard this story?
no.
It was like they were at a ribbon cutting ceremony for these brand new facilities, and the Maryland administrator was like, "Yeah, we did this at the wrong time. These kids would get dressed in a trash can for like $20,000."
I think the same thing about Florida State, man. Like they're doing a new like football facility, and I'm like, okay.
I don't know.
The Bengals just got an indoor.
Yeah.
With that, also always keep in mind when you're putting your Kansas wagers out there, a wild home schedule. Be playing. They'll be crossing state lines for a home game to go play in Arrowhead.
Yeah.
Then they've got they're playing the rest of rest of their home games. Where's the second stadium?
That's another issue though. I forgot about that. So I might withdraw that last comment. Although I do think they'll be all right.
I think that the Arizona under Brent Brennan is interesting because, as diehard Mountain West fans that we are here on the Cover 3 podcast and CBS Sports Network, remember the trumpets are for the Mountain West too. We've seen this San Jose State team be very, very well coached. And like they took lumps at the beginning of last season, but it's because they were playing all the good teams at the beginning of the schedule. And then everything opened up. They started stacking wins on top of each other. They had the great season 2 years ago where he took the team. They weren't even home, right? Because of the COVID restrictions. He had to sort of take them all over the place. They were just a traveling band of merry men and just racking up wins. So when you are able to get the buy-in of Fafita, Tataroa McMillan, a couple other Arizona players that decided to stick around, I think that was a great hire, all things considered, when you lose Jed Fish. I think that out of Arizona, Kansas, Iowa State, who's the more likely Big 12 champion?
Arizona. They've
That's
got
what
the QB wide receiver.
And coach. You think Kansas?
Yeah, I'm not anti Fafita. Okay. I want to be
anti-short people. I get it.
Yeah.
But among qualified passers, Fafita was 145th in big time throw percentage. So I don't know if his arm is one that is going to like take another leap this year. I think he had really good receivers. I think Jed Fish and company did a great job scheming it up for him. And I think he's a good like caretaker of that audience. And I do think, had he been a bigger player, like size wise, because he is tiny, he would have gotten bigger offers coming out of high school. So I think he's a nice college quarterback, but I don't know. Like I see Fafita on these like top 5 quarterback lists, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. He's tiny and he's not like Kyler Murray. Like Kyler Murray has a real big arm, so I'm just not buying in on. I'm not buying in on Fafita like next step Fafita guy. I think
Didn't Tom having Fafita on his top 5?
On my power rankings.
No, I don't think he had top 5.
Oh, okay.
No, he's number 3 in my power rankings, but those aren't like NFL draft rankings.
Right.
Yeah,
that's what I thought the difference was.
Yeah,
I liked it because
it's like where would you have Nico right now, right? Like there's a certain amount of projection if we're projecting towards next year. Arizona did lose some. I am a little bit concerned about their O-line, and I think if they're going to win it, they need Fafita to take like another big step. I don't know physically like he has that, but I don't know. Like the big time throw number, somebody tipped me to that in my Twitter DMs. Damn, you go back and watch. Like they scheme it up really well, but I'm sure Brent Brennan will do the same.
Yeah, 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 72.4% passing, took over the reins of that starting job 4 games into the season, which again, Jed Fish, buddy, what are you doing? And the answer right there. Come on. I was trying to remember like when would be the times where I felt like Fafita was letting them down, because I felt like he was helping them win anecdotally more often than not.
Gamer.
Yeah, there we go. Gamer. All right, so what about listen, our friend Isaac in the Cover 3 tailgate, that guy, he shows up every single show. He's here early, cracks a cold one, and settles in for the ongoing proceedings. Iowa State, that we got quarterback settled. What are the chances that they can make a run at this?
on zero. What teams do you have clearly over Iowa State this year?
The
Utah,
ones we just talked about.
Yeah,
Yeah, with
Arizona.
Arizona,
Utah, Kansas State, Kansas, Arizona.
Kansas State. I don't know yet. I expect them to be good, but I need to see Avery Johnson throw the football.
I'll put Iowa State with Kansas State and TCU and Oklahoma State and like just sort of all in that pile right there, where I could see you being 6-3 in conference at the end of the random number generator.
I think Texas Tech and Oklahoma State are kind of in that same level too.
Ooh, I feel better. I feel way better about Oklahoma State than I would
Iowa State.
I think, yeah, but I mean they don't have a drought. But I'm just saying, like I think they're looking up at them as well.
You lose your offensive coordinator who went to Illinois, so you know he was really smart and good at his job. So you got to replace him. I do like Rocco Becht, and I do think that overall that is a well-coached team. I think they can be too conservative at times, but I think overall they're very well coached. And in again the random number generator that is this conference, they've got a shot. I just don't like them as much as I like we talked about Arizona, Kansas, Utah, those teams.
I had what?
I think they're live to win it though. I mean, they are looking up, but it's not like you're looking up at a mountain. You're just looking up at a guy that's maybe just one step on the staircase above you. So we can list all these teams, but it's more NC State than it is Ole Miss in terms of like there's no crazy final team that you have to play in the Big 12. Like last year we talked about. I loved Oklahoma State's shot to make it to the Big 12 title game. I didn't always love their shot to actually win it if Texas played up to its potential. Like there's nobody in this league. Maybe Utah is like the one that you could say potentially that if they play to their ceiling, they're unbeatable. Like if Georgia just brings its A game, you're not going to beat them, in my opinion. There's nobody
Utah
like that.
Unbeatable in conference play. That if
Correct.
Utah plays to its ceiling, which by the way, we were talking about Jalen Daniels. Like Jalen Daniels, Cam Rising, we're putting a lot of faith in seeing some health out of quarterbacks that literally did not show it last year. So the quarterbacks getting healthy is a huge storyline in the Big 12 in terms of trying to sort out what the top of that conference looks like.
And are you going to be the same quarterback?
Yeah, right.
You know, like you have to. That's because they both relied on their physical, their running skill set. So do you try to change that, or you still the same guy? Very much a question mark.
Yep. Big time. Any other teams that we haven't mentioned or droughts that you think could be snapped? I included the Ohio Bobcats on here because as consistent, I mean, look, we awarded, Tom as, proprietary king of all wagon statuses, stat eye. We awarded and reclaimed wagon status from Ohio. But it is a group that has been really, really consistent with success, even through a coaching transition. But daggum, they have not won the MAC since 1968.
MAC is a meat grinder, Chip.
You think we could get the Bobcats to snap this streak this year?
Not this year, no. I think they lose a little too much, but they're going to be good. It's just, like when you had Curtis O'Rourke and you couldn't get there, it's tough now that he's gone. And it's, I expect them to be competitive in that meat grinder conference, but conference title might be a bit too far.
Yeah, it's a little bit. They've been there. They have been playing on the first Saturday in December, but just can't quite get it over. Can't quite get it over the edge.
Talk about the SEC all we want. That league seems to be easy to win for Alabama and Georgia over the years, but the MAC, that is a tough league to win. It's the real difficult league.
Why are we not getting automatic buys for the MAC? All right. I want them in name, and I want them to be able to get right to out of the first round into the quarterfinals. There you go. So, all right.
Bias.
We will be back on Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Come and hang out. Come join us in the Cover 3 tailgate. And you can follow him on Twitter at BudElliott3. You can follow him at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. Follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See ya.